and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we'll be analysing important news appearing in the Sunday edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 7th July 2019. The topics to be discussed today are reflected on your screen and the timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So let's begin. This news appears on page number 14 and is in relation to the Register of Indigenous Inhabitants which the government of Nagaland is soon to draw up. This discussion of ours will become relevant from the perspective of GS Paper 2 in the subject of Polity and Governance under the subtopic of Government Policies and Interventions for Development in Various Sectors. Now the context of the news is that the government of Nagaland on June 29th issued a notification to draw up a Register of Indigenous Inhabitants of Nagaland or the RIIN. This RIIN is something like a localized version of Assam's NRC. Now this RIIN is something like an official master list of all the indigenous inhabitants of Nagaland. Now earlier also, civil society groups in Nagaland have often conducted house-to-house surveys for listing non-Nagas as well as the illegal Bangladeshi immigrants. Hence on the same lines, this RIIN will be the first official master list of Nagaland's indigenous inhabitants. Now the reason for drawing up this RIIN is to prevent people from acquiring fake indigenous inhabitant certificate. The government of Nagaland has found out that non-indigenous people of Nagaland, including the illegal Bangladeshi immigrants, are using fake indigenous inhabitant certificates to avail certain benefits in the state of Nagaland. Hence, to curb this, the government wants to have a register of indigenous inhabitants of Nagaland. Now, this list will be based on an extensive survey where the survey teams will be visiting all the villages and the urban wards in the state of Nagaland. Now, as per the government officials, this entire process will be under the supervision of the district administration and will be completed within 60 days from its start on 10th of July. Hence, it is expected that this entire exercise of the survey will be finished by September 10th. Now, the designated team of surveyors will comprise of sub-divisional officers, block development officers, school headmasters, as well as other nominated members. And these survey teams will go to every family and note down that family's original residence, its current residence, as well as the Aadhaar numbers of the family members wherever available. Now, after this entire exercise, a provisional list will be drawn up and that provisional list will be provided to all villages and wards and will also be published on government website. After publishing the provisional list, claims and objections regarding the names of the people in that list will be entertained. Then finally, based on the official record and the evidence produced, a final list will be prepared and hard copies of this list will be placed in all villages and wards while the electronic copies will be stored in the state's data center. So the next question is, what will be the benefit of having been recognized as an indigenous inhabitant of Nagaland? Now, for every person who is appearing in the RIIN, the government will issue a unique ID. This unique ID will be in the form of an inhabitant certificate which will be barcoded and numbered. Next, what is of importance here is to understand that this entire process, which will be conducted across Nagaland, will be done as a part of the online system of the Inner Line Permit, which is currently in force in Nagaland. What is Inner Line Permit? We will discuss later on. Further, you should know, once the RIIN is finalized, no fresh indigenous inhabitant certificate will be issued except to the newborn babies of the indigenous inhabitants of Nagaland. And in case if anyone who is left out of the RIIN, that person has to file an application before the Home Commissioner who will get this matter verified and take necessary action for updating the RIIN if needed. Now coming to the question, who is an indigenous inhabitant? Now the state of Nagaland has 16 recognized tribes. Now please mind here that the term used is recognized tribes and not the scheduled tribes. There is a difference in these two terms. Scheduled tribes are the tribes which have been recognized so by the President in consultation with the Governor of the state under Article 342 of the Indian Constitution. And by recognized tribe, we mean all those communities who are recognized as tribes in India. Hence, Naga has 16 of such recognized tribes, the name of which have been provided for in the PDF. Now it is felt that the entry of such recognized tribe in the RIIN is virtually guaranteed because they are the tribes of Nagaland. In addition to these recognized tribes, the second category is all those individuals who are living in the state of Nagaland prior to December 1, 1963, the day Nagaland got a statehood. A good example of this is the Gurkhas community who are living in Nagaland prior to the statehood. Hence, these communities also have been recognized as indigenous. But since we are talking about the tribes in Nagaland, it is also important for you to know which are the scheduled tribes recognized in the state of Nagaland. There are basically 5 scheduled tribes, namely the Nagas. Now this Naga is a very wide term and include various other sub-tribes also within them. Second is the Kukis, third is the Kacharis, fourth is the Mikir, and fifth is the Garo. So as per the list which has been provided in the Ministry of Tribal Affairs website, these are the 5 scheduled tribes of Nagaland. Next, let us discuss what can be the possible impact of this decision. Now, one thing is very clear that Nagaland has taken a cue for such an exercise from Assam itself. Now, the NRC of Assam itself has given a lot of mixed results so far. A lot of people feel that due to the complex demography of the northeastern area, this exercise might be much more difficult to carry out in reality what the current government is actually thinking. Because though it is correct that Nagaland is less populated than Assam, but at the same time, Nagaland too has a very complex demography. Hence, it appears that this entire exercise will be easier said than done. Secondly, there is a feeling that this decision, just like the NRC, will have mixed outcomes. Because here also, a lot of people will be left out from the list, and then there will be other protests and riots pointing out the foul in the identification process. In fact, there was an incident in Nagaland where a resolution was passed which placed curbs on the illegal Bangladeshi immigrants and devised lot of ways to prevent them from integrating or living or trading in a town which was 15 kilometers away from Dimapur. Hence, it is felt that when already the situation is so communal, plus the fact that Nagaland is a region where the Armed Forces Special Powers Act is routinely extended, hence Nagaland is already very volatile, and conducting this exercise will require a lot of extra caution on the part of the government. Now, the fourth issue is that it is not clear what will happen to those people who are found on the wrong side of the Nagaland list, that is, all those people who will be left out. What will happen to those people? Because in the case of Assam NRC also, Bangladesh keeps on repeating that this entire process which is going on in Assam is an internal matter of India. Hence, Bangladesh implies that there is no possibility of a deportation of all those people who are left out of the NRC. Hence, similarly here also, it is unclear as to what will happen to those people who are not found out to be an indigenous inhabitant of Nagaland. Hence, in totality, it is felt that this entire exercise will only deepen the existing fault lines in Nagaland and will become a new means to carry out more atrocities on the illegal Bangladeshi immigrants which are staying in Nagaland. Next, let us see what is the Inner Line Permit. Now, the Inner Line Permit is an official travel document which is required by the Indian citizens if they wish to enter any protected areas in the Northeast India. So basically, all those Indian citizens who are residing outside certain protected areas in India need to have this Inner Line Permit if they wish to travel inside such protected areas. Now, the origin of the Inner Line Permit lies in the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation of 1873. Now, this regulation at that time was brought in by the Britishers in India in order to protect the British Crown's interest in the tea, oil and the elephant trade which they used to carry out in such areas. Hence, by this order, they prohibited the British subjects or the Indians from entering into these protected areas. And then after independence in the year 1950, the government of India replaced the word British subjects with the citizens of India. Hence, now the citizens of India are restricted to enter the protected areas. Now, the reason behind such a permit is firstly that the government wants to protect the tribal culture of such an area from the unnecessary encroachment by the non-tribals or the non-natives. The second aim is that such areas are located very near to the international border of India. Hence, the government also wants to regulate the movement of people around such sensitive areas. And lastly, the inner line permit currently is applicable in the entire state of Nagaland except the city of Dimapur, which is the commercial hub of Nagaland. Secondly, it is applicable to the state of Arunachal Pradesh and also to the state of Mizoram. So hence remember that inner line permit is applicable to Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh and Mizoram. Remember its origin, which lies in the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation, and also remember what are its aims. As mentioned, the process of generating the list or the RIIN will begin from July 10th. So once this process begins, it is expected that more news, especially editorials and articles, will come on this topic, and we will be discussing them as and when they appear. So with this, let's move on to our next news. The next news appears on page number 7 and reads, Farmers invest in UP, grapple with zero budget farming. Now this discussion of ours on zero budget natural farming will form a part of GS paper 3 under the category of economy, especially from the perspective of agriculture. The context of the news is that this year's budget document, as well as the economic survey of 2018-19, has focused on adopting zero budget natural farming in order to double the farmer's income by the end of 2022. Hence, in this regard, let us understand various aspects of zero budget natural farming. Now, as the term farming suggests, zero budget natural farming is a set of farming methods, and it is also a grassroots peasant movement which has spread to various states in India. It has attained wide success in the southern states, especially the southern Indian state of Karnataka, from where it first evolved. Now, the agricultural practices under the ZBNF was put forth by Mr. Subhash Palkar. Now, the word budget refers to credit and expenses. Thus, the phrase zero budget means without using any credit and without spending any money on purchased inputs. So basically, under zero budget, the farmers would not have to use any kind of credit or loan in order to buy any kind of purchased inputs or other kind of expenses for agriculture or farming. Next, natural farming means farming with the nature and without chemicals. Hence, in natural farming, the farmer is using products which are made from the nature. For example, they use cow dung and urine as manure and even pesticides. Now, zero budget natural farming has 4 pillars. The first is Jivamrita or Jivamrutha. Now, it is a fermented microbial culture which is prepared using cow dung and urine, and this provides nutrients to the soil, but most importantly, it acts as a catalytic agent that promotes the activity of microorganisms in the soil as well as increase the earthworm activity. Second is Bijamritha or Bijamrutha, and this pillar means protection of young roots from various diseases by using cow dung and urine, because it is believed that cow dung and urine have certain antifungal properties which will help save the plant from various kinds of pests and pathogens. The third pillar is of mulching. Mulching means the conservation of the soil moisture by covering the top layer of the soil with dried biomass, organic manure, etc. And this in turn would also enhance the fertility of the soil. The fourth pillar is of moisture. Now, this fourth pillar challenges the basic notion that plants need more amount of water, and rather it focuses on conservation of the soil moisture itself so that less irrigation is used. Now, this notion says that the water which the plant requires can be attained from the moisture which is present in the soil itself. Therefore, the farmers do not need to focus on more irrigation, but rather should focus on practices which help to conserve the moisture which is present in the soil. In addition to these 4, there are other important pillars as well, such as intercropping, rainwater harvesting, revival of the soils through earthworms, etc. Now coming to what are the benefits of zero budget natural farming. The foremost is that it will reduce the input cost for the farmers, which have been a major reason for the present agrarian distress in our country. Because the farmers in India are unable to afford the high input cost, which include expensive chemical fertilizers, pesticides, insecticides, seeds, etc. The second is that it will reduce the dependence of the farmer on credit, which has been responsible for the debt trap. Now, since farmers in India are poor, they turn to credit lending facilities, which most often are through informal means of money lenders. Now, these farmers, though are able to take credit or loan from these money lenders and other intermediaries, but the farmers are charged very high rate of interest. And this issue clubbed with the fact that Indian agriculture currently is undergoing an agrarian distress, the farmers majority of the times are unable to repay back this loan. And then again, to repay back this old money or this old loan, the farmer again takes another new loan, which consequently again the farmer is unable to pay. Hence, in a way, the farmers fall in a debt trap. But with zero budget natural farming, the dependence on credit will reduce, hence the farmers can avoid falling in the debt trap. The third is that it will enhance the soil fertility. As mentioned, zero budget natural farming uses the pillars such as Jivamritha and mulching, which increases the fertility of the soil. Fourth benefit is of the optimum utilization of water as well as reducing the consumption of water. The fourth pillar of ZBNF focuses on conserving the moisture which is present in the soil and hence promotes less irrigation. Fifth is that zero budget natural farming will also promote diversification of Indian agriculture because the farmers will use other kind of crops which are not water intensive, and the farmers will also move towards livestock rearing. Because for zero budget natural farming, cow dung and urine are important constitute which the farmers can procure if they rear livestock. Hence, all of this can lead to reduction in the risk and enhance the non-farm income of the Indian farmers. Lastly, zero budget natural farming will increase the farmers' income, especially in the long term. Now coming to what are the challenges faced by the zero budget natural farming. The first is the low awareness amongst the farmers. Now majority of the farmers in India, because of the fact that they are illiterate, are not aware about the zero budget natural farming. Hence they are not able to avail the benefit of this great concept. Second is that the yield in zero budget natural farming is lower when compared to the yields which is given when a farmer uses chemical fertilizers. And the third challenge is that fragmented land holdings in India can make zero budget natural farming very unviable in India. Now currently in our country, 83% of the farmers are small and marginal. And zero budget natural farming requires a very integrated kind of farming where livestock rearing is also a very important part. But since the majority of the farmers have very small land holdings, they are unable to practice integrated farming and livestock rearing. Hence, it is felt that zero budget natural farming is an unviable option as far as the small and the marginal farmers are concerned. Now, based on discussion of this topic, please try and attempt this mains practice question. With this, let's move on to our next news. This news appears on page number 14 and is in reference with the desalination and its impact on the environment and the society. This discussion of ours will become important from the perspective of GS Paper 3 under the category of environmental pollution. India is grappling with the problem of a water crisis, and hence the talks about exploring technologies to harness fresh waters are doing the rounds. Now, the one idea to harness fresh water, which has been around for a while, is desalination. Therefore, this article is talking about what is desalination, what are its pros and cons, and what are the various challenges. Now, to begin with, desalination is the process of obtaining fresh water from seawater by removing the salt which is present in the water. And the most common way through which desalination occurs is through reverse osmosis. Now, the desalination technology is not a new idea. And in fact, the city of Chennai already uses 2 desalination plants to provide potable, that is drinking water, to the people of the city. Now, the basic process is that a desalination plant pumps in salty or brackish water, and then the plant has a filter which separates the salt from the water, and the salty water is then returned to the sea, and the fresh water is sent to the households to be used for drinking and other purposes. Now, when it comes to the salinity content of a desalinized water, the normal sea water has total dissolved salts, also known as TDS, which is a measure of salinity, close to 35,000 parts per million, which is equivalent to 35 grams of salt per 1 liter of water. Now, an effective network of RO plants reduces the salinity down to almost 200 to 500 parts per million. So, this is how effective these desalination plants are in removing the salinity from the water. Now, coming to what can be the benefits of desalination, the foremost is that desalination provides us with potable water or drinking water. In fact, there are about 18,000 desalination plants in the world across 150 countries. And nearly half of Israel's water is sourced through desalination. Further, Chennai too has 2 desalination plants and each supplies 10 million liters a day. Together, they meet little under a fourth of city's water requirement. Further, the desalination technology becomes extremely important if one looks at it in the greater picture of the water crisis which is being faced by the world and especially by India these days. Hence, desalination can provide us an alternate source of water, especially in times of water crisis. Moreover, otherwise also, desalination can extend the water supply beyond what is available from the natural hydrological cycle. Because in desalination, we are using the water from the sea, hence it is not dependent on the natural hydrological cycle which provides us water through precipitation. Now, having discussed what can be the benefit of salination, we also have to discuss what are the challenges which is associated with the increasing number of desalination plants all across the world. Now, the biggest challenge with the desalination plant is the production and management of brine. Brine is a highly concentrated salt water. Now, as discussed, in the desalination process, after removing the salt, the salty water or the brine gets discharged back into the ocean. Now, technically what happens, this brine is a hyper salty water, that is to say it has a salt concentration of almost 5%, whereas the normal seawater salinity is around 3.5%. So since this brine is hyper salty water, it usually gets deposited along the coast and the shores. Now, since this brine is a highly concentrated salt water, it increases the salinity of the seawater, especially around the coastal areas. And this increased salinity of the water affects the production of planktons, which is the main food for several of the fish species in the water. And since the population of plankton is affected, even the marine animals in that water are affected. In fact, ever since the Chennai desalination plants have started to function, fishermen have complained that the brine being deposited along the seashore is triggering changes along the coastline and is reducing the availability of prawns, sardine, etc. Hence, the marine resources are being depleted. Further, this brine not only includes salt but also includes a lot of other toxins, especially copper and chlorine. Hence, even the toxicity of the seawater increases, and this increase in toxics leads to decreased level of oxygen in the water. And now, since the level of oxygen in the water is reduced, the marine life is also affected very adversely. Hence, in totality, the brine has major negative environmental impacts, especially in the coastal areas. Now, the next challenge is the loss of marine resources. Now, these desalination plants have high pressure motors. These high pressure motors are needed to draw in the seawater. Now, when the seawater is drawn in, these high pressure motors end up sucking in small fishes and other kind of life forms, thereby crushing and killing them. Hence, again, it is a loss of marine resources. The fourth issue is the loss of groundwater. Now, the construction of these RO plants requires the troves of groundwater. Now, troves basically are the areas where the groundwaters are stored in the earth. Now, since these RO plants required these troves of groundwater, fresh water from such troves was sucked out, and these have now been replaced by salt water. And now, because of this, the groundwater around the desalination plants have become unfit for the consumption of the residents, because this groundwater have actually now become salty water. So the people are not able to use this groundwater. The fifth challenge is the high cost of producing fresh water. On an average, it costs about 900 crores to build a 100 million litre per day plant. Further, to remove the salt, huge amount of power or electricity is required. Hence, either a power plant or a diesel or a battery source is required for a desalination plant to function. In fact, estimates say that you require about 4 units of electricity per 1000 litres of water. To put things in perspective for you, it is estimated that it costs Rs 3 to produce just 100 litres of water. Further, the seventh challenge is the cost of post-treatment process. Now an RO, apart from removing the salt from the water, also removes the water from other vital minerals such as calcium, magnesium, zinc, potassium, etc. These are collectively known as TDS or the total dissolved solids. Now, since the higher quantities of these salts in desalination plants will corrode the membranes and the filtration system in these plants, so therefore ideally a treatment plant keeps the TDS as low as possible. But then for the human consumption, some amount of TDS is required. In fact, a good quality of potable water will have somewhere around 100 to 600 mg per litre of TDS. So now what happens? Most of these RO plants put the water through a post-treatment process whereby salts are added to make this TDS around 300 mg per litre. And this of course again incurs a lot of cost. Lastly, coming to what can be the way forward or certain solutions which can be applied to reduce the environmental impact of desalination plants. The first and the foremost is to use some kind of alternative technology like the low temperature thermal desalination. Now such alternative technologies like the LTTD will help to save the cost and the energy consumption used to produce fresh water. Now this LTTD basically uses thermal energy sourced from the ocean. In addition to this, in all those places where the desalination plant is located in areas which receives ample sunshine, we can harness and use solar energy for production of potable water. Second suggestion to tackle water scarcity is that we can try to explore other alternative sources of water such as aquifers which are located below the seabed. Third is to ensure that the brine is treated effectively before being discharged into the sea. Fourth, we can use brine for certain constructive purposes. Firstly, brine water can be used to irrigate all those species of plants which are salt tolerant. And next, brine can be used to produce commercial salt. It can be used in metal recovery and other such uses where salt water is required. Now, based on discussion of this topic, please try and attempt this mains practice question. With this, let's move on to our next news. This news appears on page number 22 and reads, Jaipur makes it to the UNESCO World Heritage Site list. This discussion of ours will become important from the perspective of art and culture. Now, the pink city of Jaipur has become the second city in India to bag a UNESCO World Heritage Site status. Last year, the walled city of Ahmedabad bagged the status of UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, the UNESCO World Heritage Sites are places of both cultural and natural heritage. Further, the UNESCO strives to encourage the conservation, identification, and maintenance of the natural and cultural heritage around the world. And this was decided by the UNESCO World Heritage Convention, which was adopted in the year 1972. Now, this decision to name Jaipur as a site of World Heritage was taken by the World Heritage Committee at the ongoing 43rd session, which is being held at Baku in Azerbaijan. Now, this Committee of World Heritage comprises representatives of 21 state parties to the World Heritage Convention. Further, in this decision, the World Heritage Committee was provided help by the International Council on Monuments and Site, and it is this International Council on Monuments and Site which had inspected Jaipur in 2018. This council is a professional association that works for the conservation and protection of cultural heritage places around the world. Now, Jaipur bagging the UNESCO World Heritage Site status will have certain impacts. Now, not that Jaipur needs any more endorsement, but the UNESCO World Heritage status will help to attract even more tourists to the city, hence, it will boost the local economy. In fact, other destinations in Rajasthan as well, from Ranthambore to Udaipur, will also stand to benefit. This UNESCO certification will also help to attract certain funds towards the cultural projects and conservation efforts. Lastly, a World Heritage status also typically brings with it certain restrictions and obligations, especially around construction and infrastructure. Hence, this could place certain limitations on the construction activity within the walled city of Jaipur, which hopefully is for the better. So with this, let's move on to our next news. The next news appears on page number 6 of today's magazine and is in relationship with the Kharnak nomads, who are the major tribes producing India's Pashmina wool. Now, this discussion of ours will become important from the perspective of art and culture. Now, the Kharnaks are semi-nomadic pastoral tribes and they inhabit the Changthang Plateau in the Leh-Ladakh region of Kashmir. Now, these Kharnak nomads are one of the 4 major Changpa tribes that collectively produce over 80% of India's Pashmina wool. Crafts for the Kharnak is about making things which are useful for the nomadic life around animals using their wools. Now, the Changpa tribe produce over 80% of the Pashmina wool in India, and they are classified as a scheduled tribe from the region of Kashmir. The members of the Changpa tribe are traditional producers of the Pashmina wool in the Ladakh region, and these Changpas are also nomadic people who rear sheep for meat and Pashmina goats for wool in the Changthang Plateau of the Kashmir. Now, the Pashmina wool, which is known as soft gold in Kashmir, is a type of extremely fine Cashmere wool. Now, since the Cashmere fiber has a very low diameter, the Pashmina is entirely hand processed. In fact, all the steps such as combing, spinning, weaving and finishing are entirely carried out by the hands by specialized craft persons to produce products such as shawl, scarves, stoles, etc. In fact, the Pashmina shawl has also received a geographical indications tag. Now, the Pashmina is obtained by shearing fleece of 4 distinct breeds of the Cashmere goat, and these are namely the Changthangi goat, which is found in Kashmir, the Malra goat, which is found in Kargil region of Kashmir, the Chegu goat found in Himachal Pradesh, and the Chiangra, which is from Nepal. So basically, as part of discussion, you need to remember that the Kharnak is one of the major Changpa tribes and the Changpar are the scheduled tribes from Jammu and Kashmir. And then further remember that Pashmina has got a geographical indications tag and it's entirely hand processed. So with this, let's move on to our next news. Now this news appears on page number 22 and is saying that a study has found out that the southeast coast and the northwestern region of India are prone to the heat waves. Now this entire topic of heat wave has been covered very comprehensively in the DNS dated 1st July 2019. You can refer to this DNS for more information on heat waves. With this, let's move on to our practice questions. Now based on our today's discussion, here is the first set of your prelims practice question. Please pause the video and solve them. We'll discuss the answer after 5 seconds. Question number 1 is in relation to the inner line permit. The first statement, it is provided under the Foreigners Restricted Area Order of 1963. This is incorrect. The inner line permit has been provided for under the Bengal Eastern Frontier Regulation of 1873. Second, it is applicable in Nagaland, Mizoram and Tripura. This is incorrect. Though it is right, it is applicable in Nagaland and Mizoram, but it is not applicable in Tripura, and instead of Tripura, it is applicable in Arunachal Pradesh. Hence, the right answer to this question becomes D, neither 1 nor 2. Question number 2 is in respect with zero budget natural farming. The first statement, it requires an integrated farming system with livestock rearing. This is a correct statement. Livestock is an important component of the zero budget natural farming because under this farming method, cow dung and urine have a central place. Second, it focuses on fermented microbial cultures to increase soil fertility. This is also correct and is one of the pillars of the zero budget natural farming. Hence, the right answer to this question is C, both 1 and 2. Now, based on our discussion, here is the second set of your prelims practice question. Please again pause the video and solve them. We'll discuss the answer after 5 seconds. Question number 3 reads, which of the following cities are UNESCO World Heritage Sites? First, Jaipur, this is correct. Second, Amritsar, this is incorrect. Third, Ahmedabad, this is also right. Hence, the right answer becomes C, 1 and 3 only. Question number 4 is in relation to the Changpa tribes. First, it is a particularly vulnerable tribal group. This is incorrect. It is not a PVTG, but is a scheduled tribe. Second statement, they are the major producers of the Pashmina wool in India. This is correct. In fact, they produce 80% of the Pashmina wool of our country. Hence, the right answer is B, 2 only. With this, we come to an end for today's discussion. Let's move to the question for the day.